Hi, I'm Shana, an academic researcher and host of ThinkCraft, a multimedia newsletter and podcast exploring educational policy through the perspective of our guest educators. Today's episode, we have Irma Castaneda, a SPED Dean at a charter school here in Milwaukee. We talk about her journey in the school policy environment that allows people like her and SPED educators more broadly to thrive, obstacles, supports, and I think you guys will find it very inspiring. If you enjoy what you're listening to, please subscribe to ThinkCraft on Substack or follow me at Ali Reporting on Substack. Thank you. Thank you, Irma, for coming on to ThinkCraft, especially early on while we're still booking guests. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I wanted to first have you say your titles and what you do, although I do know a little bit about what you do as a SPED Dean. But how do you see your role? How do you describe it to others?
I describe it's a special education dean. And it kind of became like a made-up position, right, with the network that I'm with, because we are a charter school, and there's 4 of our campuses, and we had one director.
Okay.
And our one director, as special education grew and scholars had more needs and things, one director can't service all 4 schools.
Right.
So she went to our CEO, and was like, I just can't do this. I need a dean at every campus because our role has so many things with it. So then all of a sudden there's special education deans. And so I did leave one campus to then become the dean, and I honestly didn't know what it was going to entail. I know that I'm really big I know there's paperwork, the legalities part of it, the actual IEP writing, and the legal evaluation process, working with a psychologist. There's just so many things, and I was really good at that. Our campus, remember, was the only one that did 100% every year.
Right.
Because I'm gonna cross my T's, dot my I's. I've called MPS to make sure, legally we're in the right. But then, as a SPED dean, we're also a culture dean.
Right.
Our campus has a culture dean, but my position, a lot of the scholars in special education, they have their disability labels like other health impairment, and a lot of the times that's ADHD or attention, and the numbers keep rising, or they're behavioral. So as soon as the scholar then gets an IEP and say they start throwing a chair in the classroom, they're calling me right away. So I have to go diffuse that situation. So that's where I say the culture of that, but then also we're a little bit of an academic dean as well, because I'm in charge of, we start MAP testing, the district test tomorrow. Yeah. And so I have to make sure all of our scholars have all their accommodations in. We provide them with everything that's in the IEP. Right. So it's all over the place.
Right.
So the position is, we have to play a lot of different roles, whereas if you were just a culture dean, your role is to just deal with culture and scholars and the culture of the classroom. And if you're an academic dean, they only look at the academics part. Again, I think that's why I love the role so much, because I get to do both. Because I love the academic side part of it, but my master's and my passion was in the behavior side,
Okay, more like the interventions and working.
Yes, that's where I like.
So that is fascinating. And for people watching and listening, the charter school you're at, scholars is students, right?
Yes.
When you say scholars,
Yep.
okay.
Yes.
And that approach of having a SPED Dean take on these different hats, the behavioral, the academic, the culture dean, which I think I'll ask about separately. That's very unique. Does that mean that you were a SPED teacher? Your higher education and training going into this world was to be a SPED teacher? And do you still identify as a SPED teacher? Does that feel like a title removed or in the past?
No, I still feel like a SPED teacher, which,
Right.
I love, but yes. So I was first a teacher, and what I loved about it is whereas a teacher has 30 scholars, students to teach times 2, because they might have 2 different classes, with the rotation. My caseloads, that's what we call them, our scholars, I might have a max of like 13. And so that connection, that's what I love the most is I've always went to a small grade school. I even left colleges because it was too large for me, and I went to a smaller one. I liked that. I was at MPS prior to leaving and going to a charter school, and MPS was too much of a number. If I had any ideas, I wouldn't be able to. There's no one to go to with them, to make a school
not
better.
Individualize the attention.
Oh no, your number like 00760014. That's who you are, and I just was like, this is not my style. I need to I do actually. If I have an idea, I need to carry it out. I need someone to listen to me.
Right.
So then I went to a charter school. So I'm still a SPED teacher, as my office space right now has all of the curriculum. I know, and the other thing that I love is I have to work with the entire school. So I'm from K4 to 8th grade as a SPED dean, whereas at our network, they have elementary culture dean, elementary academic dean, middle school culture dean, middle school academic dean.
Elementary here goes up to 6th or 5th?
It goes up to 4th.
4th, okay.
Yep, K4 to 4th grade, and then our 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th are considered middle school.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, and I'm all over the place, because, we have special education. We have a scholar that just qualified in K4, and then we have a scholar that just qualified as a 7th grader that, for the first time we're discovering, oh, he's a little bit on the spectrum. He's got some autism. Let's get him the support. So, yeah, all over the place. But my first passion is teaching.
Right.
So it's just like teacher removed. I like that.
Yeah.
Because they come in my classroom, not my classroom, they come in my office, and I still treat it like a classroom. I'll have scholars ask me, can I do my work in your office with you? And of course. So they're in my office, and I'll just I have, anything. It can be like math manipulatives. Let me help you. Since you can't figure this out, let's use these hard, physical, tangible things for you to see what a pyramid looks like or something.
Right.
So that's what I love.
Yeah, and that's really fascinating, and hats off, because it's beautiful to hear the passion behind all these different things, but it's so much too. And I wrote down earlier what does your role mean to you, and also others, maybe the teachers that you are dean to, and students, and maybe your own family. So I know that's a lot, but you mentioned the connection for you. What does your role mean to these stakeholders that you work with, and also that you care about outside of work?
Funny that you just asked that, because on Friday we had a PD day, so we had no scholars in the building, and we had a special education network. So all 4 of our campuses met together at one time, and I led the PD that day. And it was just because it's the end of the year, so we did some shout outs, and I was brought to tears because I actually had so many shout outs, even from the other campuses, because they'll call me, even though they have their own dean at the campus. They might be fresh. They might be, I have a big mouth, and I'm going to like I'm going to fight. Like I always say, I work for the scholars.
Right.
So I don't work for anybody except for the scholars. I am one that I know if I'm calling like the higher ups, they're like, uh-oh, you know, like what's wrong now, or what do I, because if I don't agree with something, or I'm, you know, pushing for my scholars to get something, they'll call me. So anyways, what does it mean to me is I really do love what I do. I love it so much, and I will, just like I said on Friday to them, you know, in tears, I'm like, I'm going to keep fighting because I see the vision of our network. Like, we just have to get better with, and this is across the board, I think, since, to be honest, since like technology and since the pandemic and since virtual learning has been such a big thing, there's a huge increase in scholars with ADHD, and right away they want to give them, like parents will come and say, I want my kid to have an IEP. They say it's like a glorified tutor, and it's like, your child does not have a disability. This is like a real, you know, it's, and so there's a blurred line there that I want to help fix. But I don't know, I love it. I will stop doing it. And then another thing is, in my backpack actually that I left in my car, I was digging up I was looking for something in my basement in all these bins, and I came across one of my first jobs I had was a special ed teacher for MPS in a EBD classroom. That's emotional behavior disability classroom, and it's a self-contained room. So that means it's me, an aide, and they'll just add kids, but it could be up to like, I don't know, 15 kids only with the disability label of emotional behavior. These are the kids that started, I had a first grader who started a garbage on fire at her school. Yes, they have some major, you know, behavior issues or emotional distress. And I got thrown in that position. And it was in 2015 that I actually won an award for Madison from UWM for being an early educator award, because I took these groups, I had all boys. So here I am, like, you know, and I had all these boys, and they just wanted to learn. And that's all I did. I just held them to high standards. I treated them like I would my own children, and I made them work, and I just showed them that like they can do it, and I just did things differently. I took them on their first and only field trip. Like, I still get their parents calling me for support. To be in special education, you have to be a people person, because I'm lifelong friends. All of my students and their parents have my cell phone number. They're like, do you want a work number? I'm like, nope. I need a cell phone number. I just had a parent call me because her brother passed away, and her daughter that I used to have is giving her trouble. You know, it just doesn't stop. It's like you got to be like passionate about the relationships to be in special education. I love it. My kids know that I love it, because we've been at the dinner table where my phone will ring, and like I said, it's a parent, and I'm like, I have to step away. And it could be a parent, like, you know, asking for, I need you to talk to so-and-so because he's not making the right choices in high school, blah, blah, blah. Like, it just doesn't stop. And my kids know that I'm passionate about it. They've been to my office, and they love meeting my scholars. And I don't know. What does it mean to me? It means everything. Now, I was saying on Friday, I will stop doing it once I don't align with the higher ups, because in a charter school you have the shareholders, and you have it's more, there's no union. So it's like, who do I go to when I have to, I'm not agreeing with, you know, how this is going on. And if I stop being heard, or if I feel like I cannot help anymore, then I'll probably not leave education or not leave my position, but it's like, then that place will, you know, but I feel like could still make a difference there. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And that really frames the different sort of levels of policy insight that I'm hoping to glean from this interview. So, for when I say like the research or any studies, they'll all be linked below, right? But I'll start with noting that this value of relationships and that making all the difference and kind of being central to your success. I mean, your literal awarded success, like on paper. There's no subjectiveness to that word success, right? It seems like this is something that can't necessarily be, to some researchers, captured in professional development or necessarily captured in higher education pipelines for education, but especially for special education, at least not in a way where a lot of higher up, well-respected researchers in special education and teacher education, they can't say in a statistically significant way that like that skill, that being a people's person, that leadership component, and the upward mobility that comes with having those skills, it can't necessarily be taught. I was wondering what you think about that idea, and maybe tell me about your experience being trained, taught, the higher ed aspect especially, of becoming a special educator. And are those researchers right, or is it more the opposite of the old consensus was anything can be taught if you have enough resources there, enough financial resources there?
So actually, when I got my master's degree, I did do it on I studied about the scholars with emotional behavior disability and like what, even in special education, what is not, like, why there's so many vacancies of special education teachers across the nation. Like, you can't even, right now, I think they're like using substitutes. Nobody's lining up to do what we do because it just is, it's hard. It is hard work. Right. I mean, I'm going into work, I don't know what's gonna happen that day. I can catch kids puke with my hands as he's having an episode, and then all of a sudden there's a scholar that like family issues at home because I'm in the urban setting too, like you just don't know what the day is gonna entail. And I 100% can say that it is something that cannot be taught. I can, when we hire someone, if we interview someone, I can read a person after, like, you give me a couple weeks with them, because you can interview so well, and I love kids, right? And I'm here for the kids. If you give me a week at our job, I can tell you right away, you're not gonna work. Like, because you cannot teach, you can't teach relationships. You can't teach actual empathy, or you can't teach, like, there's a lot of teachers that will fold, right? So say there's a scholar that he's the one that's gonna flip tables, and he's the one that you are like, oh my God, he's here again today, right? Because they're here every day. They're showing up to school every day. And you are just like the first person to call admin, right? Instead of, hey, did you talk to them? You can't teach relationship building. Do you know anything about their home life? Do you care about that? Like, I had a scholar that I could not connect with, and I connect with all of the scholars, and I just had to, you can't teach someone to go above and beyond if they don't want to, right? So I'm over here like, hey, let's go play basketball. He didn't want to play basketball. I would bring him to McDonald's, have lunch with me, like just let me get into, like, what is it that you like? I need to build a relationship with you. And it's not giving up, because I spent 3 years with this kid and I could not get a relationship with him, but he did end up, like, the more that it's a lot of work to figure out how to build a relationship with someone. That's something you can't teach, because you are going to want to give up, or you either have it or you don't. And the funny thing is, scholars know it too. Scholars will tell me, she doesn't like me, or that teacher, and I always say, scholars will not learn from someone they don't like. And the minute I ever, like, as soon as I'm in a classroom, it's really funny, because the scholars that I, like, am super close with now, they're the ones, I've all suspended them before. Kind of the first time I ever met them.
Right.
And they're, to this day, one of them, she comes back from high school and she's like, you're the only one who ever suspended me. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm holding you accountable, but I love you so much. But you're not going to do this. So it's like, how do you teach that? You know what I mean? I don't know. And it's like in me, like, where, no, you're not going to sit and not do this work. Like, you're capable. I'm going to hold you to this standard. You're going to write something down. You're not going to, like, it's crazy when teachers tell me these things. Oh, you cannot test this kid and this kid in the same room, because they'll just, like, be at each other's throats, or, be very inattentive. That's mind-blowing to me, because I'm like, I don't understand, because you're the adults, and, like, don't allow that. That's something you can't teach. Like, I can take any classroom and you're going to do what I ask. It's because I give respect, you give me respect, and it's something that the kids know, like, oh, like, she cares about us. I don't know how to put that on paper. That's not something that you research. And I think that's where, when I did win the award, I read all of these cards. So I asked my scholars with EBD, what would you say to the class coming in that had me as a teacher? And most of them said, oh, be careful. Like, she is not going to let you get away with anything, but she loves you very much. So how do you teach something like that?
Absolutely. And that really puts together a lot of, like, policy questions I've had as an academic researcher. I'm interested in higher ed reform. So it's some other brave soul's jobs to research how to work better with students in K-12. But I, in this situation, am curious about how we can best prepare teachers. And I think what you're talking about is such a good argument, that it's really about harboring talent, and for those people with these skill sets, people who are like, yeah, I invest time into knowing the student outside of who they are as a student. This being able to balance, like, real relationships and showing that you care, but also you're a respected authority figure. I like what you said about all the students that you're very close with, you've also suspended. That is a hard line to follow. And if we can't necessarily get that in curriculum for SPED teacher education, then I'm wondering if perhaps it's more about making that pathway to being a certified teacher and a SPED teacher not less rigorous, because it is a serious job, but more accessible, feasible for those human beings as they're going through that teacher ed experience. Can you just tell me just describe, I guess, what your pathway was education-wise to where you are now, and it's up to you if you want to name the institutions or not.
So I went to UWM for my master's in special education, and then I had two amazing mentors there, and they were my professors. And so it was UWM at the time. I don't know if they still have it. They had where you could work for MPS and go to school in the evenings. And so that was like the real world. I'm a hands-on learner.
Okay. This is like a pre-service teacher thing or field hours, something like that?
So, yes,
okay.
But it was like MPS, like I said, we're always short teachers. It's like, so I think I already had a degree, a 4-year degree. So this was just, I'm in UWM, I'm learning like how to write an IEP. Okay. And then I go to work and they just put you wherever you are. So with MPS, I was all over the city. And I would take this, like this is the IEP MPS is making me do, and I'd take it to class and be like, and I had amazing, like, my cohort was awesome and my colleagues and like they would look at that and teach me on the spot. So all of that, I had the best. We would meet at coffee shops. I just had a really, really blessed experience with my 2 mentors. They're retired now, but and my cohorts, and they just taught all of the things like legalities. There was classes that I took about urban education that I did learn. Actually, I wish I remember the names of the actual courses, but for our city in particular, they did a great job I did a course on why does the North Side have what the North Side has versus like the home, like why do a lot of African Americans live on the North Side and not,
like the disparities and poverty levels and the difference
all of those things. I had a whole class that taught me how it started with even just home ownership back in the day and how like they weren't getting loans. Like it's that specific,
So the course went through like the redlining and the
history
outside of school. Very interesting.
It was. And maybe that's why I always stayed on the North Side in my education career, because I loved learning about that. And there is, trust me, I'm sitting there, and it's so funny because I'm on the North Side. This was before I was at the network I'm at, and I'm like, okay, for breakfast, it says we're going to have sausage and pancakes. And me and my scholars in my self-contained EBD classroom look at our breakfast, and we have sunflower seeds in a bag with a juice box and like a cracker. And I'm like, what school, it says on the MPS website that they have sausage and pancakes. What school's having that? Because we're not. Like, this is so unfair.
Right.
Like, and so, I don't know.
It captures, I laugh, but it's very serious, but it captures like, if there's a difference in the quality of breakfast, of course there's a difference in the quality of opportunities. You said their first field trip versus partnering field trips at different schools. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, and then you have to be in it, and I'm in it, and I'm actually like staring at this seeds. That's what they want you to have for breakfast. Like this, who's in charge of this stuff? I don't know, but yeah. So then I went to UWM, and it just happened, like I said, where I was placed. I was in my classroom. Well, I was in a couple other areas, and then I ended in my classroom, and that's where I did my thesis on like the scholars with EBD. And so then, oh my gosh, it was like I was able to I would meet my professors, and give them my ideas, and then they're like, okay, like strategies. I even tried out research strategies, like what's making you work, Irma? Why is your classroom thriving? Why is and that's what my whole thing was for my master's. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know why is it thriving. So we would research like, okay, let's try, because of course they could tell you like, they'll teach you different SEL things, let's do restorative practices. Like that's a tangible thing you could research. And then I'll take it over there, and there's always a twist on it. Like, yes, but you can't, that doesn't go on paper. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds
Doesn't
like there's
translate.
way more that best practices and bullet points just could not account for, could not predict. And I would love to read that thesis.
I know. Yeah. I haven't even thought about it, but I put my like heart and soul into it because I was really big on, I don't know how this is working, like, you know, but I loved taking what my professors would be like, okay, let's, you know, research all these things, put it into play with your classroom. See, that one failed. This one, you know, that wasn't. Yeah. And in the end, though, it was relationships. It really was. It was relationships, and it was mutual respect. And it was relationships with the whole family. Like, I've had so many parents. Actually, last week, there was a parent that came to see me to show me her new 6-month-old. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, grab the baby, and we're just catching up. And when she left, I look at one of my teachers, and I'm like, you know, that parent, she tried to fight me the first time I met her. Like, she legit tried to fight me. She came up to the school and was like, because I suspended her scholar. But after that meeting, and that's another thing you can't teach, is like not having fear of, go ahead, let the parent come, because they're gonna, once they leave, they're gonna see that, like, I love their scholar. I'm not somebody that's like, I don't need to be, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't have a problem, what is that called? Like, authority, like, no, I'm on the, gotcha. Like, I held your scholar accountable. I really care for them. I want them right now. They're reading at this level, and they're in 6th grade. Like this, I'm gonna give you the reality, but you're gonna feel that I love your scholar. And again, she came back just to show me her 6-month-old, and we're best friends, you know? Right. And I'm like, but the first time I remember, she was like, I'm coming to the school. And that's another area where you can't teach that either to teachers. Some teachers don't want to call parents. They don't build that home relationship. And we get the kids for 8 hours out of the day. And really, as soon as they go home, that's a whole nother, you've got to bridge that gap. Yeah. And that's something you can't teach either.
Absolutely, yeah, that resiliency. And then I guess the next set of policy inquiry would be like the internal policy, like how schools can allow for someone like Irma to be resilient and well, let me not make assumptions here. Burnout in the literature is even higher for SPED teachers. And IEPs, I'm sure, I guess both the writing and the caseload sizes and a mix of disparities to resources. I'm sure everything tends to be a little bit like charter or public school. I'm sure even great internal policy at the schools it'd still be a hard job. But what works as far as like, you can answer this in a culture way as well, but what works in your school building, like the supports you get, the obstacles you have, what's missing, and it doesn't have to be a critique of the school, rather just a conversation about on behalf of SPED teachers suffering and thriving all across Wisconsin, right? What do you think really works, and what do you think is missing?
What really works is so as a special ed teacher, you kind of make a schedule based on your caseloads, right? And you have your paperwork, and that says a lot about who you are. Like, what works is who you are as your work ethic, and then how your higher ups, your admin sees you. Like, I did all my work, right? You know, I'm coming into work. You know, I'm coming and I'm doing my job. I'm teaching my scholars. I'm doing the things. What doesn't work is if you don't have the support of your administration. So I actually, when I had my class, so an example is when I had my class with the EBD. Our class, usually those kind of classrooms, they're in the basement. We're in the basement.
Right.
We don't want to be seen or heard. They're not included in any extracurricular activities. They're not included in anything. They just don't want the kids fighting and just stay in the basement.
I see.
So when I started bringing my scholars out, I would have to go to my admin and say, hey, I need my kids to start having lunch and recess with their classmates. Oh no, that's not happening. And then just keep fighting. And for that, so when you have an admin that starts to see okay, if Miss C says it, then I can believe it. And if they don't see you like that, then it's not going to work. And I feel bad because I know that there's SPED teachers and SPED deans that they're not being heard by their admin. And I just look at them I'm sorry you have to fight that battle, because I've always had admin that will listen, I have the best intentions. So even in that classroom, it was funny. So he gave me the old school were suspension slips. Yeah. So he knew if I needed to suspend a kid, because I hate suspending a scholar, because if you go home, you're hanging out, having fun, playing video games, right? But if you're but I do believe in you cannot be here. You harmed, the classroom, the environment. You can't be here for a day. So he gave me the autonomy to suspend them using my own little, he's you don't even have to ask me. I trust you that if you have to suspend them, here's this old black and white paper where I would write it out and I could give you a copy and me a copy, and it never went in the system. Yeah. So it's that much support. Right. That is something that will make you successful. Sorry, what else were you saying?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because in the beginning, it's you were saying maybe a lack of involvement was an obstacle.
Yep.
That's when you say self-contained, does that mean they're not mixed in with the other students?
Yes, self-contained is 100%. The minute they walk in, they're with me. The minute they walk out at 3:00, they were with me. They're allowed. They eat together. It's kind of like a mini jail. They eat together. They had recess together, and it's all the grades. I had a first grader with an 8th grader, a first grade girl trying to learn in one classroom with me as a teacher, and an 8th grade scholar, a boy. Right. And so all the grades in between. It's just if you have that label, EBD, you have no other school to go to, you're getting thrown into this classroom. Gotcha. Good luck. Gotcha. Like I said, don't fight, don't do anything. And I was just now we're going to make it work. I'm going to teach you what you need to teach in first grade. I'm going to teach you what you need to learn in 8th grade. And we're going to and then another thing is the mindset of, I always said, we swim together, we sink together. You have to build that because they'd be he did that. I don't care. Because then you started to see after a year together, we're spending 8 hours together. They're going to self-correct each other, right? They're going to start. So like I said, it's a lot. You cannot learn anything in a classroom until the students like you, they feel safe. So culture is the first thing, and then learning comes second. And I guess that is the thing that you can't teach. We have all these curriculums. We have mindfulness, we have character strong. We have all these things, but it's you open the workbook and it's let's talk about feelings, and it's how do you take that and make it your own way? Do whatever it is that you have to do. It could be on the cusp type thinking. I don't know if you teach that. You know what I mean? It's hard. But yeah, so also some things that have worked for me is handbooks. When it came down to it, if it's in our handbook, I'm well, I followed the handbook, and I mean, I don't know, What else?
So I think, so it sounds like, just in the interest of time,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure I don't hold you for too long.
Yep.
But I could talk about this for a long time, because it sounds like a certain level of autonomy and like trust in the SPED teacher to do what they want to do with their classroom, internally from your admin and leaders, not necessarily having a conversation about like auditing or regulating agencies. That seems to be supportive, and also being heard by admin. I was another support that you mentioned that I think can't be understated. But what does that look like, or I guess what's the mechanism in which you are being heard? Is it straight up like go into the office of whoever's to hear you, or because I know there's teacher unions and I know there's different avenues, but I guess real briefly, what does that look like for you in your situation?
So that is calling people, going into the office. So I'll do my research. So there's this, can I give an example?
Of course.
Okay. So if you're a scholar with ID, it's intellectually disabled, right?
Right.
That used to be that's the new label for mentally retarded. We don't say that anymore, it's ID. So for you to be on an alternate curriculum, that means you eventually would not get a high school diploma because you're on an alternate curriculum. You're cognitively, functionally below, where you're going to learn a different curriculum from a different teacher.
Right.
So we're getting a lot of scholars who are cognitively there, academically and in a lot of ways, but functionally they're too high, a little too high to qualify for this curriculum.
Okay.
So say you're an 8th grader and you are doing first grade kindergarten work, like counting on your fingers, right? But functionally, you could take the city bus and go somewhere. So I can't put you on this alternate curriculum, but you're also failing, and you feel like a failure in your 8th grade class because they're doing, some crazy algebra.
Right.
What can we do? So this is what I mean about being heard. So we have these scholars, and I will sit in the classroom, and I'm just like, they're just twiddling their thumbs. Like I'm doing them a disservice. Like I said, I work for the scholars, not for the teachers. Right. When I pull them out to do my special education services when I was a teacher, they would just cry. They'd be like, I can't remember. I don't know how to do those things. And so I would just teach them where they were at and be like, okay, well, we're going to get you. Maybe you're at a first grade, but I'm going to get you. We got to meet you where you're at, and then I'm just going to make progress based on how you make I'm just going to make you better from wherever you're at.
Right.
But I can only do that pulling them out for only a maximum of 30 minutes a day. So for 30 minutes a day, I'm making them feel successful. They're learning. They're doing their work. And guess what? There's no behaviors. There's no behaviors because they know what's going on. A scholar that's in a classroom that is twiddling their thumbs trying to learn this algebra, but they know that they don't know what's going on, they're going to be disruptive. They're going to, do all these, because
it's boring.
Because they don't know how to do it. And then it's like there was a cycle. So anyways, I was able to, I'm like, this isn't right. So I started researching, like there's a bridging program. I started researching like where you want them to have a high school diploma. You don't want they can have a certificate of completion, but it's not equivalent to a high school diploma. So I'm like, okay, can I pull them out for 2 hours out of the day? And that's just something that doesn't happen. It's like you pull them out for 15 minutes, but I'm like, I don't want to. I want to pull them out for 2 hours because if I can have them for 2 hours a day, oh my gosh, I know I can teach them so much more than them sitting for 2 hours and they can't do any of this math at this time.
Right.
So I called our chiefs myself. I did some research of the programs. I looked up in our own network, these are the scholars that are qualifying. I took our school psychologists, all of the tests that they did, and showed them how they cognitively were this low so that they could qualify for a different curriculum. But, I set up meetings with our chiefs of people, and I said, you got to listen. I asked the scholars, I had meetings with the parents before, and I said, hey, do you want, would you be okay with me taking your scholar out for 2 hours a day, 3 hours, for math? And I would show them. That's that hard truth part where I'd be like, here's where your scholar is, and this is where I promise I can try to get your scholar, but I need your permission, to take him out. And then I went to my admin team and my director, and it was all approved. So now we get to take scholars out for what they truly need. And I mean, we're talking about scholars in 3rd grade who didn't know how to write their name, and they can write a sentence at the end of the year.
Right.
But originally, they're in the classroom, in their 3rd grade classroom, and they're reading some small novels. And I just fought. So you have to have that fight in you and be like, okay, what does it take? So you have to have these ideas, and then you go to your director, and thankfully I have an amazing, awesome, incredible director, and she knows I'm for the kids. I'm going to go tooth and nail for the scholars. And then I'm like, oh, if I get the parents, she's like, well, you do all the things, then come to the table, and then it was approved. And so we are starting to do that more at our campuses, and it's been successful. And I just love seeing the kids grow. So there's a big fight with special education is no, all kids should be included in their classroom, right? You want the least restrictive environment. So you don't want to pull them out for 30 minutes. But in reality, there are scholars that need to get pulled out for 3 hours because they're not in the thick of staring at a scholar in 5th grade who spells their name incorrectly, doesn't know that, doesn't know basic math skills, but you think because you're like, oh, it's not fair, they should be in the least restrictive environment, put them in that 5th grade class all day long. Well, it's like, also what's successful is knowing when special education is individualized. So if you want it to be individualized, let us individualize it then. That's where I had to argue. I don't want the least restrictive environment either. I didn't like that EBD classroom, but some need it, and then put them back in the classroom. Yeah. So it's just having those. I'll call anybody I need to call. I will talk to anybody I need to talk to. Like I said, I'll have meetings, and they're like, oh, what do you, I'm the person that'll call DPI and ask the question myself. And they're like, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm just wondering, you guys aren't allowing a multiplication table unless you have math dyscalculia. But my scholar is ID. He just doesn't have that label of math. How is, you know what I mean? I'm asking those kind of questions. It's crazy.
That is great, Irma. And I hope there's more educators who both have the ideas and have the fight in them. And it's also really refreshing to hear. Maybe we'll have to continue this conversation or have a part 2 in the next season because there's some real reform ideas within what you're doing, and then also within the schoolhouse that I'm in, the School of Thinking, which I specialize in pre-college access programs and bridge programs, like you were saying. Yep, dual enrollment credits, all these type of things. So I'm going to end it, though, with quick, I guess, speed round of Grade It. Mm-hmm. And the challenge really is not being able to deep dive into all of them, but
Just
to
grade
give,
them.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and it's sort of, the idea is kind of a reflection of people have their own grudges against the grading scale anyways, so it's like, well, how can I just say it's a this or that? But since teachers are often having to pick a letter grade.
It's funny that you say pick a letter grade too, because we don't even grade like that. We grade proficient,
Right.
needs improvement,
E is E the A.
excellent.
Excellent, right.
Yeah, so, but I do like the A, B, C, D.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess grade in either way, or 0 to 100% score if you'd
Okay.
like. Keeping work at work.
Sorry, just a clarifying question. Is this for me where I am today? Because I'm different today than I was in 2015 when
Right.
I'm still the same, but I learned you're gonna learn. I mean,
Yeah.
I was not getting sleep because I was always working. Do you know what I mean?
Right, yes, yeah.
So
This is
keeping work at work for teachers.
Yeah, and this is for you right now.
That is like a 75%.
Okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Widgets. And the physical.
Fidgets.
Oh, I said widgets. Sorry.
It's okay.
Been website designing and stuff. Yeah, fidgets in the classroom.
100%.
Well, gotcha. Charter schools as a model.
80%.
Gotcha. And then IEPs. I know that's a big category.
IEPs, 100%. 100%, but there's two parts. Are you writing the writing of IEPs and
Right.
like the legality part, or the implementation of an IEP?
Right. Gotcha.
Because you can write an IEP where you're getting 100% in the audit,
Yeah.
but are you checking for implementation? Are you doing the things that the IEP is saying that you're doing?
Right.
That part is like a 10%.
And that's a huge springboard that I think I will save for a further conversation. But thank you so much, Irma. If you have any advice for somebody who would like to get into special education, being a teacher, you can go ahead and say it, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. My only advice is to do it like fair, do all the things. You can't go into special education with any pre-assumptions. So like you read an IEP on paper and it could be like the scholar was the naughtiest scholar, and then you have this thing in your head of how I'm going to meet this scholar, and that it's just today is a new day and you cannot have anything and to not like give up, and to hold them always accountable, and to always hold the expectations like high behaviorally. Like I said, you cannot say that this scholar can't sit for 20 minutes. That's not possible. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Does he need a fidget? See, like you said, it is possible. So don't cut the scholar short. You have to be very creative, innovative, open-minded, and collaborative.
God willing. That's awesome. Thank you, Irma.
No problem.